Bum, 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 bum. Well, I think I'm live. No, don't want to do that. Well, how are you, folks? Old man Grognard here. And I am assuming, yes, I am. I'm always worried about this thing, the mic. I'm always like, oh, and here we go again. Who keeps opening these blinds? I don't get it. I'll be right back. There we go. That's about as good as I'm going to get it. So, hello, world. Another surprise live stream by Old Man Grognard. What are you going to do? How you folks doing? I'm doing kind of all right. Gearing up for Thanksgiving pretty soon, and the book is doing well, or rather, it's proceeding well. Pre, pre release, if you want to call it that. And I'm just having a heck of a time. I'm bored as hell, but that's okay. Did a little live streaming last week. Expect to do some live streaming this week, probably Thursday, Friday. Aside from this, I may do a daytime one. I don't know. I'll have to talk to Eric. We'll see what happens. What else is going on? Okay. Final edits for my novel have gone in, and it is proceeding on its way. Don will implement the edits that I gave him, and then on the 5th we should have a book. Becky said something about having a release party, but I don't know if I want to do that. Anyway, another book. I'm trying to come up with another book, and I've got a couple of things back in my mind. I think I want to talk. I want to think about to do anyway. Now, my friend Eric over on his channel likes to talk about. He's been talking about BX and the OSR a lot lately. And I guess I will too. I don't care. I mean, I'm sitting here in my pink shirt, same shirt, different day. And I just want to show off a few things that I have and talk about this company, which I absolutely love, even though they're not there anymore, just like TSR. Judges Guild, of course. And I have a rather large collection of Judges Guild things. And my considered opinion is that TSR would not be as big or WotC wouldn't have anything to buy had Judges Guild not done what they did. And what they did was publish modules and supplements. Now, supplements they may have done, but in the beginning, Gary and them were convinced that modules would not sell. Things like adventures would not sell because their idea was this was a DIY thing. It's a homegrown thing where you have the rules, you have the game, you come up with the adventures on your own. Now, this is not uncommon this kind of ties back to the word gaming roots. Because if you see a lot of things that were published, it was like, here's rules to run Napoleonics. And chainmail was to do fantasy tactical war games. But the Judges Guild proved them wrong. Let me put it that way. Because they came out with modules. Here's one of the first things they did come up with. This is the modules, a supplement. City State of the Invincible Overlord. Now, this is the start of the Wilderlands. The Wilderlands being their campaign world. And they came out with about 8 supplements for it for different areas, plus the maps. The maps, oh, beautiful, beautiful. And they come out with stuff like this. Like here's another Campaign World, Tarantus, and this I believe is the it's the city across the bay from the city state of the Invincible Overlord. Now, here's an example of one of the modules they came out with, the Thieves of Fortress Madagascar. This is a good one. And look at the price. Look at the price here. $3. How about that? And here's a famous one that they came out with. Dark Tower. The original Dark Tower by Janelle Jacques. And this thing's that I have that, and what's the other one she did? The Caverns of Thracia, which is weird because I've been able to find all these over the years through cons and other place. Another place I'll tell you about that people have heard before, I'll tell you again. But for some reason, Caverns of Thracia I could not find. Anywhere in old bookstores and old game stores, at cons, on eBay. Couldn't find it anywhere. And I found these. Dark Tower was easy to find. But for some reason, I couldn't find it. I finally ended up, Goodman Games, before they started doing like the 5e adaptions of stuff. And I know they did Dark Tower. But Caverns of Thracia, they did reprints, like authorized reprints of them, and I finally got a reprint, and that's what I have. And I don't know why, but like TSR, they also had a magazine. They also had a zine. Originally it was called The Dungeoneer's Journal. Then it was called The Dungeoneer, I believe. And first it was called the Judges Guild Journal. Then it was the Dungeoneer Journal. Then it was the Dungeoneer. And finally they settled on the Pegasus. Now, these are, I think at the time, let me see, it might have something in the back here, because in the back they usually put, buy this other stuff from us. And it's like a nice time capsule to see what they were selling at the time. No, it does. They're announcing Dragon Quest game aids. Wow. And things like that. They would publish mostly for D&D, but they also published some Traveler stuff and some Tunnels and Trolls stuff. The Traveler stuff was also high regarded. What I love about this magazine is like they sold it by subscription, and I think it was like $12 to $20 for a year. I think it was more like $12, but they gave you all this kind of material. And what blew me away here, some stuff like this, which is just charts and what do we got? Potions Perilous, or a stroll. And also a stroll through the marketplace, which is, I guess, other magic items. But what used to blow me away about this stuff, the Judges Guild and Pegasus, is they would give you the equivalent of a full supplement or mostly module inside the magazine that you could pull out, like this one. Look at this. The Quest for the Silver Empress by Clayton Miner. And this thing is, let's see, I'm just going to look at the table of contents here. 31. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's like, let's see, one, I should have counted this. Table of contents. And you just like, it's got to be at least 12 pages or more. I think we're looking at about, and a campaign map too, Valley of the Ancients. And it's just beautiful, beautiful. There's the player's map, and they give you everything for it. And it goes from page 23 to 20. So we're talking about at least 30 pages here. 30 pages, a full module in a magazine. Where are you going to find that? Huh? These are gems, for OSR. I even think for current edition, these are gems. All you have to do is convert them. And it should be really, really easy to convert stuff or to other things. Like I wouldn't mind using these in ICRPG. index card RPG. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Now they finally went out of business. It's basically the hobby grew up and they didn't. But I mean, the hobby matured. They started doing things more like, okay, more like slicker magazine layouts and things like that, and printing processes improved. But up until they ended, they were still printing stuff on like paper, like this. And see, they had a different philosophy. And I appreciate this philosophy, although it's not around anymore. But Captain Houghton, how are you? Did Judges Guild publish any adventure anthologies? None that I know of. I think they did like things like the Book of Maps and the Book of Castles and the book. Those things had stuff in it, but I don't remember any anthologies. I've been to, like, say, North Texas. Bad Mike has a booth where he sells a lot of these, and I've seen people like take the modules out of them and sell them separately. And those are very popular. I think I got a few of those too up there. But no, I don't know of any anthologies. If you can get a hold of the originals, it's great. But anyway, what I was talking about was they would print stuff on paper or thin cardstock like this. And their idea was you use it, you mark it up, and you get rid of it. If you need a clean copy, go buy another copy, because they're dirt cheap. Practically, I mean, like this one, $3. For a full magazine. And I believe they beat Dragon. They beat Dragon to the punch on that. And illustrious people worked on it too. I mean, the one I always think of is Janelle Jacquet, because she'd done a lot of work for them, along with TSR and things like that. But yeah, that was their philosophy. It's disposable. It's consumable. If you want to keep, he says, they said, Captain Hawk says, they actually printed lines for you to write in the magazine. Yes, they did. They did. If you look through City State, this one, if you look through City State, you will find, they'll give you an entry and you find lines, under it. So you can add and change things. That was the whole idea. This was supposed to be consumable. But I wouldn't do it anymore. I don't care how many copies they've printed in the past that you could find anymore. I still wouldn't write in them now, unfortunately. People were writing in them, pencil, pen, and doing their own notes, which is fine. I mean, that's their personal copy. They can do what they want with it. Plus, that's the way you have your own. This is how I run the adventure, and you can add things like house rules and things. Captain Houghton, I recently picked up a copy of City Book 3, which featured Janelle Jacquet's excellent work. Yeah, she was pretty much behind that series, the City Books. I love the City Books. Those were Flying Buffalo, the Tunnels and Trolls publisher. But it was for D&D. It was for what they call any fantasy role-playing game, but basically it's for D&D. It's probably their own system, but City Book. Yeah, City Book. I loved City Book. I used to have I think it was eight volumes of City Book. And I don't know if she did all of them, but she did a good portion of them. And she did edit them. I love third-party stuff like this. Because at the time, TSR was trying to basically get their stuff together as far as like, how do we want to tackle, now that we've got AD&D out, how do we want to tackle this kind of stuff, third-party stuff? That's why you get in Judges Guild, you get the universal role-playing system, which is, it's a reskinned AD&D or D&D or AD&D. because after a while they had it for use with D&D or AD&D, but then they got the license yanked, so they had to come up with something. And so, like, if you look at a lot of the supplements in the back or the front or something, they're like tiny text in the inside back cover, the front cover of, here's our system, use this. And they do stuff like, for monsters, hits to kill. Well, what's that? Hit points. It's easy to figure out, very easy to figure out. And so that's how they managed to publish this stuff. Mayfair is another one. Mayfair, oh man, I should have brought some Mayfair out to show. I've got a lot of Mayfair too. And they came up with, after a while, they came up with their thing, just so they could sell stuff without getting their asses handed to them in court. But I love it because they think out of the box. I'm not going to say TSR started to become corporate by that point, but they basically had to come up with some kind of company stand on, what's official and what isn't, what you can use and what you can't. So that's pretty much, I mean, if you look at the early Dragon magazines, if you look at things like when Gary would write or something like that, which, downloaded a couple of Mayfair products like Dark Folk because you guys recommended it in the podcast. Good. You're gonna have a lot of fun with those. And it's interesting to see alternative takes to things, like having a Dracolich in one of them that was like 7 years before TSR decided to put out a Dracolich. And it's very interesting to see what other people can come up with. I mean, Games Workshop, White Dwarf, up until issue 90, had D&D stuff in it, until they started to lean towards the Warhammer and Warhammer 40K stuff. And then, like, after, I think, issue 90, they said, okay, we're going to be Warhammer, period. But before that, they came up with some really good, I mean, the Fiend Folio, that was out of them. That was the guys from Games Workshop saying, hey, we got these monsters we put in our magazines. Can we, do you want to publish them? And TSR said, sure. So you get alternative. I love alternative thinking in role-playing games. That's where you get some of the best stuff. Still some of the best stuff. There are publishers out there who just, like, it's almost like ride or die. With the OSR scandal and OGL scandal, I should say, all this, it's kind of ride or die. It was, until people started go to Creative Commons, and we know what happened there. Anyway, but yeah, there was a time, if you remember, all you older guys remember, of TSR. Everybody call it TSR. They sue regularly. Williams, Cynthia Williams. They're trying to. It's funny. It's funny because they were doing that, and it's basically the internet. To me, the internet kind of sneaked up on them. You know what I'm saying? Because all of a sudden, people are doing blogs and other websites with stuff, and they were trying to stomp it down as much as they could, and they couldn't. Captain, are you still able to find anything good at half price books? I can't imagine ever finding Judges Guild out in the wild anymore. Well, in fact, I think you're right. I found some Mayfair stuff. I don't remember. I think I found one Judges Guild thing at half price books, and a few Mayfair things. But that was like 10 plus years ago when I started getting into podcasting with Save or Die. And I would go regular. There were 3 half price books within driving distance of the Oklahoma City area. Now there's just 2. And I live about 45 minutes away now from Oklahoma City, so I don't go there all the time. And to tell you the truth, when I go now, It's usually for movies, for DVDs, for Blu-rays, because that's my other hobby, and I'm thankful that I can still find stuff there for that. But as far as gaming goes, I haven't really found anything. And also, they've been starting to get wise on the prices too. No longer can I get most of like the gazetteers for basic D&D for $10, or my copy of Holmes D&D for 4.95. They're starting to know what's valuable. They're starting to know what the market can bear. And so, like, I was at a half price books 5-6 years ago, and when I was visiting my friend Mike and Liz from Save or Die, Save for Half, and I stayed the weekend with them. And and my friend Vince showed up, and him and his wife and I went over to Half Price Books in Austin, I believe. Hi, Chupa. And Half Price Books has this section where it's like, you know, signed first editions and stuff. And they readily admitted on a sign saying, okay, these are not the regular pricing. Okay, fine. That's when I found a rule cyclopedia for $40. And it's like, not my half price books anymore. Mm-hmm. Now, Captain, you said it's surprised to see Drive Thru RPG will print on demand all of the Star Gazetteers. And that's interesting because I didn't think they did all of them. I remember when Karamikos came out on print on demand on Drive Thru. That was a big deal. I mean, that and Rule Cyclopedia, that was a big deal to get print on demand after they fixed the Rule Cyclopedia problem. But yeah, that was a big deal. And they may have. See, I don't know what the heck's going on with Drive Thru as far as TSR goes. I mean, they put out a lot of stuff print on demand through Drive Thru, the DM's Guild and all that kind of stuff. But I have not looked lately, and I might just after I get done here, I might go there and like search TSR or D&D or something like that and see what comes up. But if they did, good, fine. I love it. The more people can, get that stuff out there. I mean, okay. Time to he says they definitely need to add the complete book of necromancers. True, if they're adding splat books. Yeah, I've got a copy of that. I've also got the complete copy of villains. Those two are very rare. I paid $25 for necromancers at Half Price Books. And I said, well, this is a little pricey for half price, but it's worth it. I always hope they keep it at like printed MSRP of the thing or less. And usually they did. Anyway, my story, how I got Judges Guild. Judges Guild, you can find eBay. And there are certain things from Judges Guilds that they printed that they just overprinted that you can always find a copy of this. I think there was a two-volume monster book out that other people compiled that they published, which I found hilarious. I can't remember. The Field Guide to Monsters, something like that. Man, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting one of those. They're all over and they're cheap as hell. How I got mine. Mine dates back before internet. We're talking 25 years at least. For a while around the 90s, I was living at home again in my mother's back room until I moved out here, I moved somewhere. Anyway, but I was moving. I had a job, and I would go to a game store called the War House, which, rest in peace, I believe closed last year because the owner, Mr. Lucky, died, and his family decided, oh, we don't want to keep this going, which is too bad because that was a classic game store. You walk in, you get that musty smell. You see racks of stuff are there with boxes and stuff. You see a circular rack with modules in it. The back wall, two of the back walls covered with minis, blister packs. You go in the back. There's a table where they play. Drawers. They have cardboard drawers you pull out because it's like they never got rid of anything. Everything was there. If you wanted to find a hard to find module, you go there first because they'll probably have a copy. Anyway, one day I walked in and I forget who was some neckbeard was, was manning the register. And I walked in and I saw in the very back, before you got to like the bathrooms of the office, there was this big wooden rack, that had stuff on it, papers on it, stuff like this, and I looked at it and it was all Judges Guild. It was mostly D&D. They had some Traveler stuff there, but it was all Judges Guild. And it's like, wow. And this is during the D20 era. This is during 335. Okay. And at the time I was still running third edition. And so I thought, wow. You know what? I'll bet nobody in the right mind, well, not the right mind, but nobody with a creative mind never thinks of going back here and actually looking at this stuff and getting it. And I thought, everything old is new again. I use these, they won't see it coming. Because, as a GM, you're always looking to surprise your players, give them something new, something different. And if they've never played in this, if they've never even heard of it, all the better. So I went back to the neckbeard who was at the register and I said, excuse me, what's that big wooden rack back there with the Judges Guild stuff on it? He says, oh, we used to be a Grenadier store and that's kind of left over from that. I said, oh, interesting. Do you have a set price or is it just the price on the, are you selling it for the list, the price on the front? And he says, he looks at me straight in the eye and says, well, tell you what, whatever's on the price, we'll take half. 3 handfuls and trips later, I have my Judges Guild stuff. That half of those right there. See those? That's all my Judges Guild, plus what I pulled off here. And I've carried them with me ever since. Every move, every person I've been with, everything. At the time, I was single, living at my mom's home, so okay, fine. And so I kept that stack, and I added a few to it. Like this, my City State copy was off of eBay, and also with like Bad Mike sells these at North Texas, so I bought a few off of him. Excuse me. So that's how it started. And let me tell you, I'm not just going to talk to the OSR people. I'm going to talk to all gamers. Look for this stuff. I mean, yeah, okay, whatever current edition, you should be able to adapt it. Easy peasy. And whatever fantasy system you use. Anything. Yeah, Captain. Yeah, you found a local store that has second edition books. They're getting scarce. Yeah, I got a lot of splat books too. That half price books, splat books. Like I said, my biggest thing was getting all the most like 3/4 of the gazetteers from them. Some of which even still had the maps. Bought off North Texas. Bought a couple of friends. We traded things like that. I used to have the book of maps. I did like some of my Judges stuff. I used to have like the 3-volume book of maps, but I traded that for a set of D6s. a set of antique D6s from the turn of the century that were made out of ivory. And it's like, yeah, I can do that. And I've got a lot of them. 3 or 4 of the splat books have signatures by Janelle, and some of my other books do too. But those splat books she did, like Campaign Source Book and Catacomb Guide, I made sure she signed that, because that to me was one of her best things that she ever wrote about the game. I mean, she nailed a lot of stuff in there that it's like it was an eye opener. Really was. A Campaign Source Book and Catacomb Guide. There was a companion companion book called something campaigning, Creative Campaigns. That's it. But I made sure she signed that, and that was before she changed, so it was signed Paul. I got a few things signed Paul. You need to get those books still? Yeah, I know. But I've gotten to the point where nowadays I do my movie collecting and game collecting. I haven't bought anything since June, and before that it was the June before. It's like I save all my buying for North Texas RPG Con or whatever con I'm going to, because I just don't go out to look for this stuff anymore. I've got so much stuff, books, box sets, things like that, and I don't know. And even my movie collecting is slowing down, and it may have something to do with both of us being retired now and probably the money. But, I always figure if I want something bad enough, I'll figure out a way to get it legally. Anyway, but let's see, I wanted to look in here about, I got my Gangbusters box set, my Ghostbusters box set, my Hollow World box set, Dawn of the Emperor's Gazetteer box set, which is the box set that came with the Gazetteers, and Marvel Superheroes. Yeah, I found those at half price. I found that at half price books. And a couple of Ravenloft and the campaign, Forgotten Realms campaign box set, Undermountain 1 and 2. Okay. And Chill, first edition box set of Chill. What I like, and Ghostbusters, I got it with a ghost die. You know how rare that is? I still have that ghost die. I keep that in the box. Nobody's taking it. I use it when I run stuff. And I always make sure I get it back. When I'm running at a con or something, I say, okay, everybody has to run the ghost die. All right. At the end, it's where's the ghost die? Come on. Nobody takes the ghost die from me. Sorry. But back then, it was like most of those box sets I got for $10. It's crazy. I bought, and I gave this away because I bought it for a certain reason. I found for like $7.50 a first edition printing of Bunnies and Burrows by Dr. Merle Rasmussen. And at the time I was doing Save or Die. And so I bought it. And I bought it specifically for Elizabeth Stewart. When I saw them at the con, Mike and Liz, I handed that to her, and I knew Dr. Rasmussen. I knew that, why am I saying Merle Rasmussen? Where the heck am I getting that? I mean, come on, Glenn, shape up. You got to do better than that. I have a really bad name. I really have a bad name, a bad habit with I can't even talk it. Dr. Dennis Astaire. Thank you. Forgive me, Merle. Forgive me, Dr. Astaire. He would come usually every year. So I handed her the book and I said, go over to that table, see where Dr. Astaire is, get a signature. And I made her sign it. And I said, there you go. You're welcome. That's the kind of stuff you used to find at half price books. It was wonderful. Yes, it is an awesome collection, which I do have to downsize every once in a while. Uh, but what are you going to do? When I was in New York, I bought a couple things at their game store in New York City. Mike sold me. Okay, one thing that every once in a while I still find something like, yeah, you know. And last year or the year before, I think it was 2 years ago, I found Blood of Heroes. And that's something I've been keeping an eye out for. I haven't been really looking at it, but it's like I just keep an eye out for it because and Mike had it. I don't remember. I paid $15 for it, I think. I don't remember. But Mike had it at the con and I bought it. And I looked at it and I said, "Do you know what this is?" He said, "What?" He says, "This is the clone version of DC Heroes. The old DC Heroes game." And so I bought that. At one time, I wanted to take the face rip and convert it over to just use it for other things besides superheroes. And I looked into that. I got a couple of books on that. Um, so that's something I was thinking about anyway. The book I'm getting ready to publish kind of has starting to get my brain on a fire again about, first of all, I want to write another book. And secondly, it's kind of got me into being the antsy thing about running games again. You know what I'm saying? I have nobody to run games with, but still. So I'm going to kind of focus on trying to write a second book just to like keep that at bay. Like, okay, you can't game right now, so write the book. It'll get better later. You'll be able to find games later. What kind of game am I going to run? That's a good question. If I was to run a game, basic, probably maybe first edition. I've I was I was raised on first edition. Beck me. I'll just when I think about it, I'll run it because I love it. I love Beck me. Um, I've got the rule cyclopedia there. I've given before they did print on demand. Every once in a while, I run into one for cheap, and I ended up giving them away. Which, sure, why not? I mean, if I got it, you need it. Here you go. But I don't have to do that anymore. What would I run? If it was anything D&D, it would probably be either BECME or BX, like maybe Old School Essentials, one of the clones. But if I was going to run like first edition AD&D, I would grab Hyperborea. I love Hyperborea. I love the way Jeff took that system and really tweaked it into the pulp fantasy, and just some of the stuff he came up with are brilliant. Brilliant. He talks about no races, which is fine to me. At one time I told myself if I was going to run first edition AD&D, I'm going to run everything off of the Hyperborea system. I even printed out from the first edition player's handbook the section on races, just so we could play races with this system, because it wouldn't be Hyperborea, but it would be the Hyperborea system in my world. And so I would run that because Hyperborea, I have a blast running. I love it because one, no races. So you don't have to worry about the racist stuff. I mean, it's races. I always say races of men, because they say you pick where you came from in the world, and Celts and Eskimos and Amazons and all this other stuff. But it's more of a role-playing thing. You know what I'm saying? It's a role-playing thing. Because when you have just men, you can like really go crazy on the classes. And they have 20. Yes. See, they don't have things like multi-class either, or dual class, which I think is a boon. You don't have to worry, like if you're playing the current edition, you've got your build, you need to do this kind of bit, and the people who like to tinker like that kind of stuff. But there's 26 classes in Hyperborea. My contention is if you can't find what you want to play in here, go play another game because you do everything. Everything, it's great. Yeah, Captain, playing as humans seems foreign to everyone who hasn't played Cthulhu or Gangbusters. I've played Cthulhu. I've ran Cthulhu in the past. I don't do it much anymore. I don't know that game kind of. I love running it. It's a great system. I like the basic role playing system. You know, I've never played like RuneQuest or anything, but I like the system. It's just as far as Cthulhu goes, I always find them a little restricted. You know what I'm saying? Little restricted. Because I may want to do something that has nothing to do with the mythos. I mean, you can do it. They publish things where it's just like boo, but everybody's going, oh yeah, Cthulhu, great Cthulhu, Necronomicon, and all that. But my main problem with that is I run out of material. I did not feel confident enough to write my own adventures for Call of Cthulhu, and I hate being what I call module bound, where it's like, okay, this module's over, which one do I run next type of thing. Because eventually you're going to run out of stuff. So you might as well start doing it yourself. And I just didn't feel confident, so I don't run it anymore. Are you going to run a module for your Hyperborea game? Probably. I usually start with the Trapper's Lament that they came out with 3rd edition, which is a 1st edition starter adventure. I used to do the Ghost Ship of the Desert Dunes, and I still do that every once in a while because it was 2nd to 3rd level. So I just started everybody at 2nd level and went for it. And it's a fun. I mean, they write some really good modules for Hyperborea. You don't have to use them in Hyperborea either. They're just damn fun. But I've run the Ghost Ship so many times I can probably do it in my sleep. The Lame Trapper's Lament, I've only run once, and that was a good time. So, yeah. I've run campaigns in different systems. I'm thinking of going straight to index card RPG because you can convert anything to that. That's so easy. That's one of my thoughts anyway. If you want the classic stuff, I can run the classic stuff. But anyway, I think the last campaign I ran for my group, my Monday group, when we were meeting, was in Swords and Wizardry. And it was my campaign that I came up with called the Cattle Drive. That was the overarching premise. The player characters were hired as troubleshooters for a cattle drive getting ready to commence to the other side of my campaign world. They were driving like 200 head of cattle to a place called the Devil's Claw Mountain area. And the player characters were tasked with, they were a week ahead of the cattle drive. So they go out when the cattle, before they started, they go out a week before, and they would basically solve problems along the route. They know the route they're taking, to solve problems along the route. And they're in contact with the people who are doing the cattle drive all through it, because I have things in my world called spell stones and talk stones. They're just regular stones that you cast that mages can cast magic, certain stones. And the talk stones are basically a walkie-talkie. And so they keep in contact with that. And what I did was I put a limitation in it saying, okay, it can broadcast up to 200 miles. Because my world I knew was like 2,000 miles or something like that, 1,500 miles. So it's like, they can broadcast to a certain extent, but they're probably always going to get in a situation where it's too far. It won't carry. They can't get in hold with them until the cattle drive moves or they go back. So that's how I do that. Cattle drive, because I did like one, two, three, four, five sessions, five areas, adventure types. Um, because I looked at the map and I go, this is beautiful. This is beautiful because they have to keep going. The cattle, they have to keep going because the cattle drive's still going. So, like I said, a week out, that gives them a week to solve whatever problem there is there. And I can throw whatever I want in there. I can grab a module, a dungeon adventure, whatever that I could run in one or two sessions and go, okay, just change a few names, change a few town names, boom, I'm ready. But the funny thing is, when I actually ran it, I ended up running most of the stuff I created. I mean, at one point they had to solve a murder mystery. When they got to the mountain range, the cattle had to go across the mountain range. So I borrowed a dungeon adventure, and I had the dwarves had a mine train. They had a train inside the mountain. And so they contracted with the dwarves to move from one base to another. And they had an adventure in there. When they got out, they had another one. And then at the climax, they ended up in this town called Eisenhouse, which is at the foot of the Devil's Claw there. And on the castle, it's Castle Stonewolf's on the top with their lord. And so the whole thing was the lord was buying the cattle for the town. He gives them the cattle. So they always have meat and things. All he asks for is when they slaughter, drain the blood and give it to me, because he is a vampire. He is a vampire who does not want to be a vampire. Under unfortunate circumstances, he became that way. And it's funny because everybody in town loves him, absolutely loves him. And what I did, I based him on Peter Sellers from My Favorite Year. So he drinks blood, but he usually drinks a Bloody Mary. So he's always like half smashed. And that's how he deals with being a vampire and just, living his own life. And I had other things, like there was a werebear that helped them. There was a guy who created zombies in the nearby forest who helped them, a gypsy, and they had what's not. And as far as zombies go, my zombies didn't eat brains or anything like that. Zombies, I used the original classification of zombies: risen undead who do your bidding. That's the baseline right there. I had a pack of werewolves stalk them. It was fun. See, the overarching thing was there was somebody who was trying to stop them from getting there and getting the cattle to the town. And the person who wanted to do it is basically thinking, okay, I'm going to turn the town against them because the cattle will never get there or something. And he was having like ghouls and zombies attack the cattle when they're in the pen when they got there. And he would have little things. Every adventure we did, I had a little like encounter with them where they had to fight something that shouldn't be there. Like the town where they did the murder mystery, they were going through an alley, and these demons, these little devil demon imps, whatever, show up, start attacking them. And they're going, where the heck did that come from? Well, it was the guy who was trying to keep them from doing their job. And in the end, this guy captured the cattle drive people. And we had to go rescue them and things like that. They're going to sacrifice the cook. And it turns out, well, spoilers. It turns out that the main bad guy who was doing all this was Baron Beauregard, the guy who, Beauregard Stonewolf. Beau Boudreaux's in the character I'm playing in my Monday game. But it's his grandfather, who is also a vampire, who wants to turn the town against his grandson, so they will pitchfork and whatever, get rid of him or whatever, and then he can come down and take over the town because he wants to bring back Orcus, the Lord of the Undead, and use them for sacrifices and things like that. He had all these other cultists that were helping him. And that didn't happen. But I had a lot of fun with that. I think, to me, the last one, that one is probably the best of the bunch. But at the same time, here you got a cattle drive. You got constant movement. That's the thing. You got constant movement. They do stuff like they pass through a town where all the help in the town are zombies. Hey, oh hush. A friendly necromancer gives them zombies as long as it's from other places and not from our graveyards. And so they were doing. They went into a bakery where, like, the zombies are, "Can I help you?" And they ordered cinnamon rolls, and they said I said they were the best cinnamon rolls you ever tasted. And it's like, yeah. And I mean, they had a human, like, running the place, but all the helper were zombies. And it's like, boy, they make good cinnamon rolls. We got to come back for that. I had one point where I ended a session where they were in a tavern, and I ended the session because they were sitting there listening to a couple of bards, troubadours, and they were playing a suite for harp and tuba. And it just that's story for another day. So, but that's pretty much that. Anyway, all right, guys. I'm gonna have to cut it for here. So I gotta go start doing some writing and zombie cinnamon rolls. Yes, sorry. And I'm glad you guys showed up. I'm Captain Hodden and the rest of you. Thank you very much. And we will have one of these flash mobs happening again. So you guys take care, and I'll probably see you later in the week on some other show. Thank you, Captain. Good chat. Good luck with your writing. And I'm going to say bye, folks. I'm out of here.